Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Tertil. How are you?
Hey, Fassa. I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you doing?
Good.
I'm so
Just a
excited for today's
beautiful
live.
Tuesday here in the office.
Honestly, the weather is beautiful outside. Arizona is just serving us some nice sunny weather these days.
I know, right?
For all of our viewers coming in, we have a very exciting guest who will be joining us today. As we'll be bringing her in soon. So we're so excited for this conversation, joined by a phenomenal leader. And once we get started, you will be able to really just see woman phenomenal power leadership in all its glory.
Oh, she's here. I'm gonna. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Zahra.
Assalamu alaikum.
How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah. How are you all?
Good. Alhamdulillah.
Happy you're with us.
I'm happy to be here. This time change has me so confused, and the fact that you all are exempt from it is even weirder to me. But I'm jealous.
That's the perks of living in Arizona. We never have to do all this math to calculate the difference of time.
Is it inappropriate to say, is that the only perk of living in Arizona? Because we're sitting in California.
I wouldn't blame you. As summer is approaching and it's getting hotter, I have nothing to say. But wait until it's winter. The weather here is beautiful.
I mean, yeah, it's more the right wingers and the white supremacists that I'm commenting.
There is that too.
Sorry.
Okay, we'll get started just because we don't want to waste your time. Zahra, I'm so happy you're here with us today. When Tertil told me you agreed, I was like, I'm jumping in. I'm coming back.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's so good seeing you. It's been, I guess, like a few weeks since I've seen you in a Zoom.
Yeah, I was like, a few weeks. It's been a couple of years, but yes, you're right.
But welcome everybody to CAIR Arizona's Women's History Month series, where we're featuring incredible Muslim female leaders in the community and that are vital to the civil rights movement within the United States. And today we're featuring one of my favorite leaders, a role model, someone I look up to as a new executive director here at CAIR, Sister Zahra Billoo, who is the executive director for the largest CAIR chapter in the United States in San Francisco. So Sister Zahra, I'm so happy you're here. And I want to dive right into the questions because we're so excited. What made you become an executive director for CAIR, and what really inspired you getting into this movement?
I don't know if this is because I'm not Gen Z and tech savvy, but like my Instagram screen thinks I'm not active, so I keep having to like touch it to be like, hey, no, light up. So anyway, if you see me touching my phone, it's because I haven't figured that out. You know, I was 17 when 9/11 happened. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood, visibly Muslim from a very young age with a practicing Muslim family, alhamdulillah. And 9/11 was a turning point for me where my faith, alhamdulillah, was secure, but my identity as an American and my safety felt shaken. And so I found a really early path to activism through working with the MSA, the Muslim Student Association, and the Campus Progressives and Student Government, and a variety of other campus organizations. I went to protests. I got involved really early on. And when I graduated from law school, Allah is the best of planners. I was looking for work, and CAIR San Francisco Bay Area was looking for an executive director. And though this wasn't the type of job that I envisioned having, there's never a boring day. I love what I do. And so I'm reminded often of something one of my mentors said. He said, have a plan, but also recognize opportunities when they come your way, and be ready and willing to seize them. And this was that, is Allah presented me with an opportunity.
That is incredible.
That's great advice. Having that plan and looking out for opportunities because I think most of us, when we have a plan, we're kind of blinded and just not looking for the opportunities that are presented to us. Could be right in front of our face. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I would want to follow that up with, what's something that you would tell your younger self about this work? Is this something that you saw yourself getting into when you were younger? And what's a piece of advice or just something you tell yourself in a younger age?
I would tell myself at a younger age to remember that we do this work for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that no person, no organization, no political force can harm us if he doesn't permit it to, and no one can benefit us if he doesn't permit it to. And keeping that focus is so key to staying grounded in the work, to continuing to work hard, and to staying focused. Keeping that in focus is key to staying focused. You get what I'm saying. It's important.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I love that you touched upon being intentional. And I think that goes in every aspect of our lives, really, just centering Allah in it and knowing that what we're doing it serves bigger purpose. And that almost helps guide us during times where it's difficult or the work gets overwhelming. You realize that you have a higher purpose for it. So that was beautifully said.
Yeah, I think, you went towards the past, Tartil, but I'm going to go a little bit to the future because I'm very interested, and we're all very interested. Where do you see your chapter in 5 years from now? And like, how do you see things evolving? It's a scary question, but...
It's especially a scary question following COVID, right? If you'd asked me 5 years ago where we would be today, I might have said something entirely different. When I started close to 12 and a half years ago, there were only 2 staff at this office, and we had a small office, but we were in it every day of the week. Today, alhamdulillah, we are close to 20 staff, and we have a much larger office, but we're also working hybrid. And so we're only in it half the time, and then we're out in the community the other half the time, and we're working from home half the time. And so in some ways, it's hard to know, right? Remember about 2 years ago, we all thought COVID was going to last 2 weeks. Then 2 more weeks, then 2 more weeks. So it's hard to say. But my hope is that we can continue to grow the footprint of CAIR San Francisco Bay Area, that we can continue to be a force to be reckoned with on behalf of our community, but also that we can continue to leverage the progressive politics of this region to advocate for creative and innovative legislation that protects our communities and sets a model for others across the country.
That's very true. It's definitely hard, especially now in these times, to think ahead more than a week. Anyone that tries to plan with me more than a week ahead, I'm like, I don't even know what life's gonna look like a week from now on. So let's just take it day by day at this point.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see the growth. Like when you said you started off with 2 staff members in the office, mashallah, and now you're at 20, that's phenomenal. And that speaks so much to the perseverance and the amount of just work that was put into that. I can imagine it wasn't an easy process.
We've been really fortunate to have a community that's been really supportive. I have had to get very comfortable asking people to give donations. Just that the consistency on both ends, right? Is that the community support, and then the consistency of our board, our staff, right, has helped people know that they can trust us. And inshallah, it's exciting to see all of the CAIR chapters growing.
That's beautiful, inshallah. So considering that this is Women's History Month and the focus really is on women leadership and empowerment, what's one way that you think, how would you get more women to be in leadership positions in Muslim organizations?
It's really important that Muslim organizations prioritize women's leadership and are supportive of women leaders in all of the ways that they may need it, right? It's like a classic example that comes up around masajid boards is that, don't host the masjid board meeting at a brother's basement after Fajr. Like that's not going to help women feel included. It's also not just about the one woman leader, right? So that's another thing that organizations should keep in mind is you got one, that doesn't mean that your job is done, right? You need 2 and 3, like they need sisterhood on these boards. They need sisterhood in leadership. And we will move away from tokenizing them if we treat them as whole, powerful leaders who have something to contribute beyond just their, like, I crossed off a checkbox.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Love that.
Yeah. I think, Sister Zahra, something really important in like our leadership positions too, is, I mean, I'm not visibly Muslim, but you are visibly Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that experience is like for you, right? Has it affected some of the work that you do?
It's a really great question. I think inside the Muslim community, being visibly Muslim carries a privilege of sorts, right? I know that because I wear a headscarf, I am sometimes seen as less threatening than someone who doesn't. Or if I show up with my partner or my husband, then people are less uncomfortable around me than if I show up when I'm unpaired or single. And so inside the Muslim community, the headscarf creates privilege that is helpful, but also challenging then for women who don't get it. Outside the Muslim community, it's the reverse, is that the headscarf can be very limiting. It can lead to a perception that I am oppressed, or that I don't speak for myself, or that I'm not an actual leader. And so there, women who don't wear headscarves are sometimes treated better. And so all along the way, I think what's most important is that we always keep in mind how these different privileges manifest, right? Whether it's a headscarf or not, whether it's being able-bodied or not, being documented or not, the color of our skin, all of these things manifest in different ways. And when we acknowledge that privilege, we can be careful not to abuse it, but also to be supportive of and inclusive of people who don't have it.
Yes, absolutely.
In the same way that we ask men, right, to recognize their privilege.
Yes, 100%. And I think these are conversations that in the past were more taboo or frowned upon, or just like hush hush, like we don't speak of these things. But one thing that I'm really seeing that's making me just really feel glad is that in this day and age and within these new generations, you really see a more open and honesty about having these conversations. And like you said, privilege comes in so many forms and it affects how we move in spaces. So it is important to recognize that in all their ways. So we're going to move on to some more lighthearted questions.
Nice.
Who is the most influential woman that you know, and how does she inspire you?
I would say that it is my mom, in part because I spent the last several years reflecting on what a terrible teenager I was. And like, just how ungrateful I was for the choices that she made and the sacrifices that she took on so that I could have the privileges that I have today. And she's always done it with humility, with a commitment to making sure that I'm fed, while holding my trust, and to this day giving me the gentlest advice. Even when she gives me advice, she's very careful to, like, please don't be offended. And I'm like, no, you're my mom, you can give me whatever advice you want.
That's beautiful. And I think the older we grow, the more we realize there's just so much wisdom and so much guidance in mothers that when we're younger, we sort of take for granted. But no, I love that answer. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. I feel the same way, Zahra. So when you're speaking, I'm like, oh yeah, that was me.
Right? Like, I think it took me until maybe my early to mid 20s is when I stopped fighting with my parents, but probably like late 20s, early 30s is when I was like, oh, like you were right about everything. And so I tell parents now, I'm like, look, like it's going to be a while. It gets worse before it gets better, but it does eventually get better.
It's so true, though. It's so true. I want to apologize to my mom about all, how bad I was as a teenager. But I'm like, no, I'm not going to get that soft right now.
I hate to be sad, but like time is limited.
It's true. I wasn't that bad, but I'm still okay.
No, I know. I wasn't that bad either, but I'm just saying time is limited.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to relationships with friends, colleagues, family, etc., it's like whatever I need to say, just say it now, because who knows if I have tomorrow. Sorry, but I know that's really sad.
No, absolutely. And I think these are just beautiful reminders. Life's too short. You just should always have that appreciation for the people around you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I got a little bit less lighthearted, but lighthearted in some ways. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that women face today?
Patriarchy, right? Misogyny. So the systems that we operate in are built to uphold power structures that disadvantage us. Period. Right? Like whether we're talking about the gender wage gap and how across the country and across all sectors women make less money than their male counterparts, or we're talking about the way in which beauty standards are imposed on us, or the way medical care and feminine care is resourced, to unfortunately the way women are treated sometimes in our massages and in our community organizations. And so the systems themselves are what I would say are the biggest challenge. The second challenge, and that comes to mind for me often, is just how we treat ourselves. And I don't mean like, right, how we second guess ourselves, how we doubt ourselves, how we don't ask for what we deserve, is I think another thing, because sometimes I look back at my life and I'm just like, Zahra, like you could have done this for yourself, or you could have asked for this for yourself, or spoken up in this way, but we don't because we're afraid, or we have imposter syndrome, or we second guess things. Yeah, and so that's I think those are the top two, but misogyny, patriarchy, and the systems that we operate in are really, it doesn't matter how much I advocate for myself if I operate in a system that wasn't meant to protect and benefit me, that becomes challenging. And to be clear, I don't mean that about Islam at all. This is where I love our religion so much, because it is the antidote to what we see in Western structures, what we see in capitalism, what we see in government structures, really across the world, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I really love what you said in terms of sometimes even we can be our own obstacles, because that really resonated with me. And I think like a lot of times for me personally, when I was younger, I was very insecure about my places in certain spaces where you feel like, do I deserve to be here? Do I belong here? And it's just like, no, like you don't need to ask permission to be in these spaces. You should just go in there with all your confidence. So
exactly.
And I think a lifelong, like struggle too, right? Because I wouldn't say our parents raised this way, but this is, since the society we've grown in has been this way, it makes it very hard to like get rid of these, feelings, and is the imposter syndrome that
Absolutely. So following the question that Az asked, how do you think that these challenges might change in the next 10 years? Or do you see them changing in the next 10 years?
These challenges are centuries old. So I don't know that we topple systems in 10 years, but we're having more conversations. People are learning and advocating more deeply, and there is incremental change. And so I'm hopeful that if today is any indication, that in the next 10 years, we will see more and more women in leadership, more and more women advocating for themselves and each other, and incremental change on a variety of the issues that come up that really undermine women's success. For example, right, like access to healthcare, the wage gap, access to leadership spaces and decision making, and so on. But it's going to take more than 10, and it will require, to be clear, not just women, but also males, men, and right, like those who claim to be our allies, to really speak up, stand up, and join us.
Absolutely. And I think in the struggle of any kind of liberation or movement of freedom, it requires not only the oppressed, but the oppressor as well. And in a sense, the hierarchy really is, the patriarchy really is the oppressor. And in order, like you said, for that to change in the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever, however long it is, it does require those who hold power, men, to step down from it and really give that. So yeah, it's beautifully said.
All right. This moves us on to the last question, and it's my favorite question, actually. If you can have dinner with any woman, present or history, who would you have dinner?
So I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to both of you, but what comes to mind right now is the women who work at CAIR chapters across the country. It is and I have a really great team of women here at CAIR San Francisco Bay Area, but I know that there are women like both of you and others who do this work across the country. And there is something about working at CAIR that is, we're trauma bonded. Maybe one way to joke about it, but we're trauma bonded, but we're also sisters in this work, advocating for justice and empowerment. And we live an experience that is like no other job. And so there are women that I've worked with over the last 12 years who, they've come and gone, and I've been able to stay friends with. And COVID has really made it so hard for everyone to see each other. But that's who I would have dinner with, is the women, past and present, who work at CAIR and who have committed their careers to protecting the community.
And I think that's what we're gonna do once things slow down.
Inshallah, there will be ice cream.
Then have a
yes.
group trip.
Yes, yes. Inshallah.
That definitely needs to happen. I think it's so hard with virtual because, like you said, there's so much connection and personal relationships that come out of like being in person. But inshallah, we need to do a CAIR get together soon afterwards. And if you're ever in Arizona, you got us. You're always welcome to come through.
Inshallah, I look forward to
it. Thank you so much for joining us, Zahra, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. And thank you, everyone. Please follow her on Instagram, and if we'll post down San Francisco's Instagram as well, so you should be following them as well and seeing all the great work that they do.
Yes,
sounds good.
It was amazing speaking to you. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Alaikum salam.